So, hello and welcome to the 1% podcast. Today we've got the awesome Mr. Sam Vause on the call. Sam was a client back in July 2024, started January 2024. Sam's journey and where he's been is a real powerful one for a few reasons. One, historically, and Sam will discuss this more, ex-military, quite a lot of discipline. But then for the reasons why a lot of guys listening to this would relate, work, life, universe, get in the way and impact your ability to show up as you would want. And so me and Sam had a conversation and we did some work and he's by all accounts in a great spot. But what I want to do is bring Sam back on to discuss his journey, what he's done, and more importantly, like having come through a process, how he deploys that in real life, in the wild, because that's the important part. And something we said offline before we got started was life is life and things happen and none of it's perfect. And I think that's the key bit, that resilience aspect, which I really want to dig into and talk about. So it's going to be a powerful conversation for anyone listening. That being said, Sam, do you want to just do a brief intro? Who you are, what do you do?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Luke. Thanks for the intro. Hi, everyone. So I'm Sam Vause. I'm currently an operations manager, kind of between roles right now. Historically, I was an army officer by kind of origin and trade. Did that for best part of 10 years. Got out of that, kind of fell into operations management just because it was like people, system, process stuff, quite similar to the military. Um, and this is kind of to like nest this in some sort of time period. This is like start of just before COVID. So the summer before COVID was when I left and moved to Amazon and went into Amazon operations. Same sort of time my first son arrived, COVID happened, and you can kind of see where this conversation is probably going to
Yep.
go. Number of compounding factors basically took me to a place over the course of a number of years where I didn't really recognise the person I had been. Um, a whole load of stuff just felt like it was out of control. And I ended up reaching out to Luke off the back of one of your Instagram posts where it was where you were showing like pictures of your 20s and talking
Yeah.
about how like people reminisce about the glory days and all that stuff. And that really resonated with me because I'd gone from being someone who had a lot of self-respect, a lot of discipline, which actually, looking back, I realise now a lot of it was actually externally imposed. It wasn't really self-discipline; it was like the product of the environment that I was in the army at the time. Um, and I'd gone from that, like being really fit, like quite in shape, to this like fat knacker who wasn't really proud of the shadowy cast in front of his kids. Um, like things ostensibly were going like quite well at work, like on face value, you'd think like things were going well, but like inside it wasn't. And like that post really struck home because I really wasn't. I was kind of, I guess, comparisons are the thief of joy, but I was comparing myself with how I was in my 20s and just thought I'm nowhere near where I want to be anymore. I was got to the stage I was just quite like intense feelings of shame, I'd say, and like lack of confidence as to my ability to actually regain control of it all. Yeah, so ultimately I reached out to you, and then yeah, we went from there.
Well, thanks for a very honest and transparent description of where you're at, Sam, because I know for anyone listening, that's very helpful because often as blokes, we're quite good at putting a veneer over the top. Yeah, it's all great. Like you said there, it's all great on paper. And something I hear a lot is it's all great on paper, then there's a but. And then there's a but. And when you peel back the lid, there's quite a lot going on. But I think as guys, and especially because you want to provide and you want to be successful and you want to be good in your job and whatever else. Well, we grind it out and we put a grey face on it. But internally, you're like, I'm not feeling my best here. And then especially, I think, for yourself, given that you've come from a place of high discipline, really taking care of yourself. And we've got an identity that we want to be. And if we're not living up to that identity, I think, A, that's tricky. But the other part, I think, is even more, I guess, insidious is, and I talked about this before, I know we talked about it historically as well, Sam, is those commitments to yourself that you're not keeping. Because maybe be that on exercise, be that on being present, be that on setting boundaries, what eating mindfully, not starfish on the sofa and opening a can of beer versus talking to your wife, like all those things. One of those every now and again in isolation, no big deal. If your day is full of those compounded, no one sees all those commitments of those things you're not going to do or you are going to do that you don't do. You get 360 HD vision on all of that. And if you know you've got higher standards and better standards for yourself that you've kept historically and they're not being kept, I think that's really, really bad. You mentioned shame and self-esteem because you're like, well, I'm not doing what I say here. Like you said, the shadow you cast for your kids, all of that concept of I'm not practicing what I preach. I think that's not a nice place to be because you see and know all of that. No one else sees any of that, but you do, and that's also where you can get that, I think, strange dichotomy of, well, your mates, yeah, so you got it, you're smashing it, Sam. You're a lovely missus, lovely kids, and business is good. Yeah. Why do I feel shit? I don't get it. And I think, I don't want to speak out of turn. It's that it's you not living up to your own internal expectations. And this isn't about having a six pack or what society thinks. Fuck all of that. It's about you and what you know you can do. Does that resonate or make sense?
Absolutely, yeah. I think for me, one of the tools that you introduced us to when I went through the blueprint was like the Demartini values exercise, where you kind of
Yeah,
a lot of it, like introspection, I guess, the stuff that you genuinely consider really important. And for me, the themes that really came out, it wasn't work. Like, I'll be really honest. I know a lot of the guys that will follow this are really motivated by work. I am to a degree, but it's certainly not my primary motivation. And like everything I was doing day to day was feeding my job and my career, but actually it wasn't my primary motivation. What I wanted to do was like invest in being a good dad, good husband, and work was just a vehicle to kind of facilitate that. Um, and but everything I was doing in my day to day was like literally 180 of it. So I had all these commitments in my head about being a good example and like coming home and like cooking well and like investing quality time with me and the missus as best as we could during lockdown. Um, and all that stuff. But actually, none of it was happening. Like, it was all kind of aspirations in my head. And the longer it went on, the further those aspirations got from reality, and kind of the worse the situation got. And for me, I ended up like putting on more and more weight. Probably put on like 3 stone between leaving the army and where I got to like I guess like my lowest ebb. Um, and the more I did that, occasionally I would get the motivation. I would make the time to go and do a run, and I'd do it, and I'd just be infuriated with how slow I was, or how quickly I'd get injured because my body was just carrying too much weight. I was just putting too much stress on everything. And like I was comparing myself with the standards I would have set years and years ago, which it wasn't fair to do, and I get that
no,
now. Um, but nonetheless, like all of that battle was going on in my head, and I don't think anyone else really understood it at the time. Like, my wife knew that like I was struggling, but I was so embarrassed about the whole like lack of physical condition. I didn't even with Emily, I didn't really want to talk about it too transparently. So it was all very like internalized for a good number of years.
and that what you described there cannibalizes your own headspace because there's a lot of mental bandwidth that's taken up with beating yourself up, not feeling good, and so if you think about that, like I've used this analogy before. It's a bit like going down the motorway in second gear. You're like, wee, you're going to get the job done, and you'll probably get there, but it's not efficient, and there's not a little left elsewhere. And this is where I think some of this stuff can start to play out elsewhere. So it's like, well, I'm still getting my job done, and it's work. All I'm doing the work, but I've also got 20% of my headspace beating myself up with your words. I'm a fat knacker. I don't feel good about myself. And so then you're not got a lot left for being present. Or when you walk through the door and you want to be there and available for the kids, you don't check your phone. And then when this throw a ball past the wall and it smashes, you shout at them versus laughing. And all of that, I think, comes from your own state and how you're able to do that. And so it just creates this, unfortunately, like a negative feedback loop where you're not feeling great about yourself. And then I think the most important, one of the most important things I think you said there, Sam, was this expectations on yourself. Your life now, as we talk about it, is very different from when you were a young man, single or not, in the army. And holding yourself to that standard is actually completely unfair. Like you said, it's not fair. And I think, but and again, this is a common narrative, I think, where gents will go, right, well, I'm going to pull my socks up and I'll start doing what I was doing 15 years ago. And like, it doesn't work and it falls over, or you injure yourself, or it's not possible. Well, I can't do it. It's like, no, you just got a very different life now. So it doesn't mean you can't. It just means we have to reframe and look at the whole situation differently, and almost letting go of that past version of yourself to allow a new version, which isn't any worse. It's just different.
Yeah.
But I think it's a different set of tools for a different situation, right?
Yeah, for sure. Like the expectations thing, I think it for me it's been. I remember on the phrase you had a phrase that you used years ago on one of your podcasts. Sorry, one of your Instagram posts, I think it was, which was like you can have anything you want, you just can't have everything you want. And I've
Yeah.
kind of done the same thing with the bits of my like early life that I wanted to like hold on to. So I used to be quite a keen runner. I used to do a fair bit of rugby and stuff like that. I've dropped the rugby because I just recognise like the risk isn't something that with kids I'm willing to take, but the running is still important to me. Like it's something that I've used a lot, like since going through the blueprint and like lost like 3 stone, and got to a stage where I can now run and I can set some pretty aggressive goals. And actually not dissimilar to the kind of standards that I used to have when I was in the military, because it's kind of the only thing I'm doing rather than like doing a bit of everything as I was back in my 20s. And I've chosen to like invest in that. And like this year, I will run a sub 130 half marathon, which might not sound that impressive to a
Mate,
lot of people, but
that's
for me,
quality.
it's decent. And
But
it's kind of,
interestingly, just to interrupt, Sam, 12 or so months ago, that would have been insurmountable.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
But then by lowering the bar a little bit and giving yourself some grace to get back to build back some foundations, well, then that's more than possible. And that I interrupted you there, so I'll let you carry in a second. But I think the reason I did so is because it's really important. This, like, just because we're talking about having a different set of frameworks, life being different now, doesn't mean you should give up. It's just and so having a goal where you want to run a sub 130 is fucking fantastic, but done from the right foundations, not oh my god, I'm freestyle, I hate myself. Right, I'm going to do that, and then all you do is focus acutely on that one thing at the detriment to everything else, and then you might achieve it or not, but then everything falls over after because you haven't looked at the underlying issues as to why you are 3 stone and unhappy. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely, yeah. I guess it's like I wasn't really treating any kind of root cause. I was like chasing symptoms for a number of years, and I had tried to do stuff like I tried to go on like a running program. I tried to go on like a diet program. I tried to do this, that, and the other, but none of it was holistic enough. I don't think like none of it addressed like the whole. So you'd kind of fix one thing, but never. It wouldn't deal with any of the peripheral stuff that was going on. Um, which I think was why like the blueprint was so transformative, because it was so holistic and it taught me so many habits that genuinely served me and still do serve me to this day, really.
Well, that's I guess a good segue into like as we sit today, right? So, like we said, knocking on 12ish months ago, we did a bit of work. By all accounts, I think you did amazingly well. Like we were saying offline, you're proper on it and smashed it. Quite went back into military mode. I think probably it's fair to say. It's also fair to say I think that's unsustainable. Not that the program is, but more so like the level of discipline you applied to it. So as we sit here now, nearly 12 months out, what have been your key learnings and takeaways from having come through that process and then kind of deployed what we learned in the wild, so to speak?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I guess the first thing I'd say is like to caveat all of it, like I don't want any of this to sound like holier than thou, like uh, it's
Yeah, I'm
very much
fixed. I'm
a work in
perfect.
progress.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Totally.
yeah. It's none of it's done. It will never be done, but it's like it's much overall. I'm in a much better place than I was, and I'm able to kind of I'm able to like look at my whole picture much more holistically than I was. So the stuff which I probably learned was some of the tools are like just part of my daily life and part of my daily rhythm and routine. So like the intermittent fasting thing, like obviously that was like one of the first habits that we built, and that's still there. That just kind of exists in the background now, and it's just part of my life. Um, the ice bath to start the day, that's still there, still going strong. Moved house recently, and one of the first things that went up was the ice bath.
Nice.
So like I have like bits and bobs from the routine which are completely rigid, and they're like just part of how I operate now. And there are other bits, and I think where the real value of it is knowing, because you go through a whole set of habits and tools that you go through in the blueprint, right? And some of those I I saw the value, but it wasn't necessarily something I needed every single day. So like the journaling and meditation for me, the tools in the armory, I guess, that I can kind of bust out when life does throw its challenges and stuff. And I guess it's overall when something is like not making me proud of my reaction to something, I'm much more able to like dispassionately ask myself why that is, and go after what the root cause is, and then identify the right tools that's going to help me like navigate through the kind of short term to find a bit more equilibrium, and then get back to like my routines now, such as they are. So I guess that's probably the main thing, like being able to accept, like, you've got to roll with the punches a bit. It's not as if going through the blueprint is going to stop you ever having problems again. And
Nope.
it's just that as and when they transpire, I'm able to almost take more of an objective view of what's going on, what the underlying issues are, and what tools I need to deploy over whatever period of time in order to, yeah, like reestablish a bit of control and equilibrium and get back to where I want to be.
I think what you're describing there, I would almost phrase that as, I guess, like resilience with life, right? Because, and something I talk about a lot when I'm working with clients in my social media, but I really passionate believer in, right? You can't control externally what happens. Shit is going to hit the fan all the time. Good stuff as well, right? It's not always bad all the time. And what might look, quote unquote, and I'm using inverted commas here, good on one day with how you show up, might be very different the next, given the circumstances and what life has chucked at you. And for me, the real power is being able to ebb and flow with what you've got. And it's sometimes I hear a lot with some clients initially is that, oh, well, next week will be a better week because, this is a bit quieter and life got in the way this week. No, that's your fucking life. It's always going to get in the way. There is no getting in the way. It's your life. And if something happens, it's like, well, that's happened. What do we do about it and how do we deal with it? And what you said there, that stop, dispassionate, look back, analyze, what do I do? That kind of constant error correction almost for yourself on a feedback loop. For me, that's where the power and the resilience is, because to pretend that life's not going to be challenging and difficult is absolute nonsense. It will be all the time. It's also fun all the time as well, right? This isn't like just a doom fest.
Yeah.
But for me, it's the power of being able to look at that and then adapt. And what do you do next? And we get shit wrong. Like, just because we're talking like this and we talk about being resilient and looking at problems dispassionately, there'll be times when you go, I did not shower myself in glory yesterday. Right. What do I? But the key is right, what am I going to do? Or right, what will I do differently next time? We're not perfect. But if we're able to do that, that allows for resilience. You said something a few minutes ago, Sam. You said, just to be clear, I'm not a finished article. It's an ongoing project. We're a constant project. But if we look at it like that as little micro experiments and ways we learn and grow, well, then we can constantly keep getting and moving forward to be a better place, but in a real positive way, versus X has happened, everyone's a bastard, and throw your toys out the pram, right? And sometimes there's, it's about, if life is busy, stressful, work's hectic, just doing the bare minimum. But in those scenarios, that's often good enough. But giving yourself the grace for that, does that make sense?
Yeah, massively. I think the word I'd probably use, and it's an aspirational value. It's not something I'd say I've attained, but like it's probably serenity. Like
Yeah,
it's being comfortable with like being uncomfortable, I guess.
yeah,
Um, and like not if you're going through a period where it's like, I'll give an example recently this year. It's like when we moved house, like a whole load of stuff going on, like changing jobs at the same time, and during all of that, I was like, I'm not going to have time for like the same kind of rigor for my exercise routine that I've
yeah,
had. And previously, I would have probably gone, oh, well, what's the point in all of it then? I'll just drink a bottle of wine every night and do
yeah,
whatever. Um, but actually, I was like, well, let's not do that. Like, we'll accept, life's happening, there's a lot going on. So we'll moderate expectations here. But actually, like, I'm going to be so busy, I'll just raise my step count goal. So I didn't
yeah,
do as much like actual exercise, but I was probably doing like 25,000 steps every single day for about like 3 weeks just whilst we were doing all that stuff. And I think like having the ability to just maintain a bit of balance and like compensate in other ways rather than just having perfection everywhere it's probably been like a powerful realization for me.
what you've just described there, I think, is beautiful, which is exactly what it is, because that isn't you being lazy or not being good enough. That's you objectively looking at your situation and going, right, what are the priorities? Moving house, new job, lots going on. There's certain areas here that are going to have to be on the back foot, not forever. And I'm being serenity there, accepting of that. So I'm going to do this instead. That's empowerment because you're making a choice. This is what I can do. And then you roll with it. Is that forever? No. But then you're in a much better headspace because of it. You're achieving what you've committed to, and you're able to do that. And so this is where, like, at the surface level, we're talking maybe about exercise and practical. It goes much deeper than that from a mindset and headspace perspective, because, like, you could have just gone, oh, fuck everything, drink the bottle of wine. That's a choice, and that would compound your behaviours, and it means you're not going to show up elsewhere. But it's because of your ability to take a step back and be objective, be fair to yourself, and then make a conscious decision of what you want to do. That's it. But I think in maybe an older Sam mindset, or for myself included, you go, well, I can't do that, therefore I can't do this, therefore fuck it, and then do the bad thing. It's like, no, that you can do that if you want, but there's always fruit on the table. I was chatting to a gent on one of the calls yesterday, and he, to be fair to him, really busy, works in professional services. He's got 2 massive transactions going on. He's just had a baby, his first baby. To be fair to him, he's got a lot going on, right? And he's like, I'm just trying to do the exercise and I can't do it. And I'm stressing. Okay, well, like, let's just be really trite here and take a step back. You have a shower every morning. Yeah, okay. So, tell you what, could you do 5 push-ups before you get in the shower? Well, of course I can. Well, let's do that. And so straight away, we've destroyed the idea that you can't exercise. Now, is that enough? Is that what he wants to do? No, it's not, but it's something, right? And so what we say there as well is that the reality is probably once he's gone down and do 5 push-ups, you can do more. So lower the bar for yourself. So right now, given everything you've got going on, you want to commit to doing something. That's the thing that we've talked about. You're probably saying, I can't do half an hour because I'm too hectic and busy and I'm tired because the baby's not sleeping and I've got these transactions and working late because overseas, blah, blah, blah. That's all true. It's not an excuse. You're not lazy. That's valid. But you also, for yourself, want to do something. Well, how's about you just go, right, drop and do 5 or 10 push-ups before you get in the shower, you tick the box. And after the conversation, he was like, well, you know what? I'll tell you what I'm going to say. I'm just going to commit to doing some push-ups and some sit-ups before I get in the shower during this busy phase. Off you go. Now, that's a much more empowered place than I can't do it, fuck it. Now, he wasn't going to do that anyway because he's in the process and we're helping him, right? I'm very aware that he's been coached and there's accountability there and all the rest of it. But for me, it's fostering that kind of mindset allows for you to take ownership within your life. And in my experience, there's always something. Now, that's an exercise perspective we're talking about there, but there's layers, there's everything, right? And so if you can start to look at your life with that lens, like you said, the objective, what am I doing? Well, then you can be in control and actually make changes and be in charge. It might not be the things you actually top level want to do, but it's better than not, and then much better than the negative that might be created from that. Does that resonate?
Yeah, yeah, it really does. One of the parallels, it's almost like it's not really parallel. It's almost an asymmetry, I guess. Is in my previous role, I would spend like hours and hours and hours every week doing like daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annual business reviews all the time, like looking at all the metrics and all the performance and stuff, and then figuring out, okay, what we're going to do, what's the next step, like what actions are we taking, what's gonna move the needle here, there, and everywhere. And it wasn't really until I got into this process that I ever stopped and thought, how about doing a bit of that for me rather than
Yep.
just for the job. And like having, that's not to say like I sit down every day and do like, okay, how did Sam perform yesterday? How was last week? But like,
Yeah.
it does facilitate goal setting. And for me, like, I like the data. I'm still like, ever since Blueprint, I'm still like on the scales every day, just to not like governed by it, but it's not going to certainly like change my frame of mind about myself if the numbers aren't what I'm expecting. But it's just kind of part of the daily rhythm. And if there was like a change in something, it's nice firstly to know that, and then secondly to be able to have confidence that I've got the right tools to make the necessary changes to keep everything like where I want it to be within like the goals that I have. But yeah, I think it's interesting how like there's probably loads of guys who spend their days like talking about like reviewing this, that, and the other, and then they never actually start. And I was certainly part of this, right? I'd never stop and think, what do I want to achieve, or what do I want to like consciously? What do I want to do for me, not just in my job?
You make a really, really valid and very important point there, because lots of the men, gents I work with that are watching this, they'll do the root cause analysis all the time at work. Like they'll help and empower their team to look at it. Like no one that I know of ever worked with, like let's say they had one issue, they go with the client, right, you sacked, fuck off. Like, whoa, 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 whoa. No. Let's dig into this a little bit and find out what's going on. And actually, can we improve that? And actually, we can't do that, but that's better than that, right? Could you do that? That's the sort of mindset you would foster. Real problem solving and working through it. Especially the guys I work with, senior, strategic, right? But then when it comes to looking at themselves, that all kind of goes out the window. Now, I'm not judging when I say this because the issue is it's very hard to coach yourself, nigh on impossible. Hence, that's why I've got a job. If it was easy, I would be out of business, right? And it's not. That's the point. But I think for a lot of the time, it's applying some of that same rigor that we would do in a corporate or commercial or a business setting to yourself. Because a lot of the time, in my experience with the coaching process or when you're doing work on yourself, the answers are quite obvious. But when you're in it yourself, you can't always see it. A lot of when I've got a coach, I always work with a coach. I'm very transparent about that. If you ever work with a coach that hasn't got a coach, they're a fraud. Am I the finished article? Am I fuck? No way, right? So, but we all need what's telling. We all need to be told what's right in front of your face, right? And sometimes you're like, someone will say something to you, and you go, "Are you fucking kidding?" Like, is that really? But yeah, but you can't see it, and then you go, "Well, once you see that, you can do something about it." And so, for me, it's that root cause analysis. What's going on? Then the next step is doing something. And I think when it comes to ourselves, especially from what we're talking about, Sam, the place you were, and a lot of people will probably feel like they are, that kind of work at all costs, slightly burnt out, all great on paper, but um, we have such high expectations for ourselves. I think that's often what stops us from initially making any progress. Lower the bar a little bit for yourself, achieve, and you're like, oh, okay, there's something here, and I can do this, and actually I can build some self-esteem and show myself confidence, and then very quickly you can get to the point where you are pushing things forward. If that makes any sense.
No, no, it does. Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's I mean, ultimately, it's why I got into the well. It's one of the reasons I got into the blueprint. Really, I wanted that, and I had no idea how to do it. Like I couldn't do it myself. Like you can read all the theory, but like to be able to have someone who, firstly, the accountability bit is massive, right?
Yeah,
Um, but to be able to have someone to just kind of talk through the practical challenges of like some sort of utopian vision of all these different things you're going to layer and layer into your life and all these great habits you're going to build. To actually be able to talk through what does that look like at a practical level? Like, how do if I can't do that because of this situation I've got going on, that I can't really control, then what else can I do instead? And it's that, I guess, like that problem solving bit that I was just, for whatever reason, just doing it all day, every day at work. I couldn't apply that to myself, and I did need that external support. And now it's given me the toolkit. I feel like to be relatively self-sustaining,
yeah.
um, but that's not, we're all students, aren't we? It's not to say it's by any means done. There's plenty I'm working on.
Yeah, and working through that problem solving piece, for me, I think that's the most important part because there is there is the stuff that we need to do, and something I hear a lot is, "Oh, I sort of know what I need to do, I just don't do it." But then it's like, well, if you did, you'd probably be doing it, but you don't. So I think we don't actually know exactly what we need to do. You've got a conceptual idea of the sort of things we need to build in. What the issue is, it's when the rubber hits the road. So, like you said, it's like, okay, I need to get fitter. Right, I'm going to do a 15K run this morning. When's the last time you run? 3 years ago. All right, try that then. See what happens. Bang, falls over. I can't. No, no, no. You know what the problem is, and you know there's the solution is probably some exercise somewhere, but it's not appropriate for what you're doing. And so then the problem solving bit is going, well, okay, well, that impacted my ability to do that. Often when it's ourselves, we default to I'm lazy, I can't be arsed, whatever. You're someone who runs quite a large business, or you're very senior at Amazon and do X, Y, and Z. That doesn't strike me as, and you're ex-military. Doesn't strike me as someone who's lazy. So why are you behaving lazily? What time did you get to bed? Midnight. Oh, okay. Why did you get to bed at midnight? Because I was really stressed, fucked around on my phone, and drank half a bottle of wine and slept like shit. Oh, so are you actually lazy? Or maybe we need to address some of that. And then that workout you're talking about in the morning that's not happening, that might happen easier. And so that now, when I've said that, it's quite a trite example, and it's an example I use a lot. It sounds really obvious. When you're stuck in the loop of those negatives in the evening, you can't see that, right? We address that, give you the autonomy, solve the problem, put the steps in place to fix that. Well, then you're the author of that and you're in charge of that. And then you can build more of that, right? And I think for me, that's the meat. There's the things that we need to do, but then there's the things that are impacting our ability to do or not do them. And they are multifaceted and all over your life. And for me, the key thing is to be able to help you address those, but then give you the tools to understand what you need to do to keep that working and moving forward, but then also for yourself to error correct to yourself, right?
Yeah, 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 absolutely. I think for me that was why the blueprint was so impactful because it was totally holistic. It wasn't just addressing like one thing in isolation and just expecting everything else to somehow be fine. Um, it looked at every aspect that I lost control of, and but it also like I'm inherently impatient. Like if it didn't yield something quickly, I'd have got really like just disengaged and thought, or whatever. I'm not going to wait like 2 years to be able to, to see some kind of difference. The results were like tangible very very quickly, and that like that kind of positive feedback loop then just fed more desire to like reinvest in it and reinvest the time and I guess just reinvesting in myself, which is like it's certainly helped me to keep that like momentum going ever since I first started like last January.
Well, I don't want to cannibalize any more of your time, Sam, because I know at the moment you're actually off. So you're doing me a huge favour for having this chat, and I really appreciate it. And I know anyone watching and listening will have got a lot out of it because it's really helpful to hear. You're very transparent and talking about where you were and where you've come from. I think that's important. Like I said at the start, lots of us, can not feeling great. We put a brave face on it, and actually, part of the time, you just got to rip the plaster off and do something. But I think your story is powerful, regardless of whether anyone wants to work with me. It shows you that it's very much within your gift to make changes. It's about firstly acknowledging and recognizing you're not where you want to be, and then putting some steps in place to change that. Yes, coaches and coaching processes can help, but I believe everyone can do that. Let's just say that someone's watching this, listening to this, they were in a similar situation to yourself, regardless of this is whether to work with me or not. What would you say to someone in the situation that you were in back just before we started, like who's feeling like that, maybe watching and listening to this, and this conversation's resonating?
It's a really tough question, isn't it? Because I don't know how I would have taken it at the time. Like it took me to, I had to realize it myself, if you know what I mean. Like
Yeah,
I had to accept, I had to get to a stage where I accept I can't fix everything I'm trying to fix. And for me, it was like I had all these roles in my life, and I got to a stage where the only one I was really doing any decent job of was my actual core like professional job. Every other
yeah,
aspect was not where I wanted it to be. So I guess like if anyone was in that place and doesn't see like can't join the dots to on some sort of visible and tangible that they trust and believe is going to make a difference to all those other bits that are really important, then yeah, if you can't do that yourself and it's important enough to you, then it's probably worth reaching out and seeking some help, because actually the changes were pretty minor. It was the layering of them,
yeah.
which like the cumulative effect of like good habits, that really made like the long standing difference for me. And like, it's great to come on and it's always great to catch up with you, Luke, but it's great to kind of do these things. Like very recently, I had a guy who I previously worked with in a previous role who I like really respect, who'd seen the last chat we did. That was on LinkedIn, and he said subsequently that had inspired him to go off and start doing like half marathon training. He's just done his first, like he's approaching a sub 140. That's his next goal.
Amazing.
He's lost like 3 stone and stuff. So like it's great to see like the impact you can have. Obviously, I'm very much here to help you out on your business as well. But it's great to see like how many people out there can benefit from from like listening to this kind of stuff, and how hopefully people can benefit from my vulnerability, I guess.
Most definitely, and like I've said to you before, and I'll say it transparently now, like there's two parts to this podcast. One of it's very much helpful for potential clients to see how I work, what I do, and us make those discussions, right? But on the flip side, it's also very helpful and powerful for people to hear that you're not alone. If you are struggling, you can make changes. It's important for men to be open and talk about where we're at. There's this stuff about like, men just need to be able to talk. Yeah, we need to talk, but then we need to fucking do something about it. That's the thing about being a bloke, is you actually want to take action at the same time. And so a conversation like this, I think, is helpful because it shows transparency, being honesty with where you're at. But then on the flip side, it's like, well, if you want to change, it ain't going to happen by fucking osmosis. You need to do something, but it doesn't need to be large, massive, or mind blowing. It's all those little bits. And so, the idea behind this podcast is it helps me discuss my business and how I work, and people can see that. But I truly believe these kind of conversations help other men, because you recognize, oh, it's not just me versus the world. There's other people I know and respect that I would look up to. Bloody hell, they've struggled with this and they can do it. Well, if they're struggling and they can do it, well, that almost validates my struggle, but then it also means it's totally achievable. There's something I say a lot. You're the problem, you are, but you're also the solution, and you can make yourself the solution. And for me, that's the empowering part, and that's why conversations like this I think are really powerful. So, mate, I really appreciate you coming on and taking the time, Sam. On that note, we'll leave it there. I think, Sam, it's been awesome having you on. Maybe get you on in another year as well, so we can talk about what's happened then. It'll be a different conversation and see how we're getting on.
Sure.
It's great to see you thriving, and I wish you all the very, very best. And it's great to see the impact the work we've done has had, but also your ability to take that by the reins and run with it in the wild and sort of thrive within your life, which is what it's all about. If anyone is watching this or listening and they'd like a conversation, anything that we've chatted about with Sam today to see how I could help, reach out, drop me a note in the comments or find me a DM. Otherwise, have a fantastic week and we'll see you all on the podcast next week. Cheers.
Cheers, Luke. Thanks.